Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are crime dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season 1 finale of Death and Other Details. A great season finale. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we're immediately picking up where the last episode left off, and we find out where the bombs exploded. The bombs didn't explode for the purpose of immediately killing people and sinking the ship. The bombs were specifically placed so that the servers would get destroyed. Like, Imogen immediately recognizes, like, right, you're just trying to cover your tracks. And she's like, right, there's no one, I'm not here to just kill people. Yeah, some of the people up here are not great, but they're not the people I'm really targeting. I've gone after the worst of the worst, and obviously that's been a bigger part of a larger scheme, but we'll get to that when we get to it. But yeah, like, there's going to be a boat nearby, and everyone's going to be able to escape, and Kira asks Imogen to go with her. And she does, because obviously it's her mom, so she escapes with her mom. When we saw Sunil, was it Layla, Teddy, and Jules with those carts, I was like, what is that? And I love how we bring that back, because I was like, yeah, that was something we never got answered, what they were taking off the ship. But yeah, it turns out everyone that was aboard the ship is fine, is okay. But it turns out that was all part of the plan. We even catch up with Rufus, who was like, yeah, like, you could say it's a coincidence, but the whole point that Imogen had made point before was just like coincidences are just clues you haven't unraveled yet or something like that, right? So he figured, like, right, this was a whole orchestrated plan. Like, Kira planned this out for there to be any death, but she was like, the real cause of all this was fear. Like, you look at everyone on that boat who's stricken with fear. It was to make the rich and powerful kind of realize you could be got to at any point in time. You thought you're safe, your money and everything doesn't mean as much. I could come after you and just kind of leaving this instilled fear of, like, yeah, you came so close and nothing you have could ever, like, it's meant to break them. I think it's kind of a middle finger to the rich and powerful that she was able to kind of break them. And you just see the emotional turmoil in the aftermath of it. Some people we never fully caught up with at the end of all this was the Chuns. Well, we caught up a little bit with Eleanor, who's like, oh yeah, I'm kind of fine with boring for now. But Anna's like, Eleanor, I want nothing to do with you, because you're thinking, like, okay, maybe things between her and Layla can work out, but it's unclear at that point. So we'll circle back to that later. But first and foremost, let's start off with the whole situation with Kira and Imogen, where we find out the truth behind everything. It turns out Kira was attacked before the bomb exploded. So she got attacked, and her, like, I guess that's the call that Lawrence made. He said, like, oh, he made a call. I guess that was the initial attack. And they just assumed, like, her assailant was killed, but they probably thought, like, oh, like, either her right hand dude, I think that's Andres, I could be mistaken, but maybe that's the dude, like, they hired later on, or at least he presented himself. It's that fraud thing of, oh, I'm gonna fake my own death, like, oh, so and so wants me dead, I'm gonna need, like, you, God, I'm messing up. Say, like, there's a murder situation, of, like, there's a murder for hire situation. An undercover cop would be like, hey, we know this is going down. We will have an undercover cop be the one to take the hit. What if that's what Kira did with that guy? Because I was thinking, like, would they assume that the guy that Kira killed hadn't gotten to Kira yet? So they were probably thinking, like, well, did they call in a second hit, or was that all considered one hit? And they thought, like, oh, finally the guy that went after Kira finally, like, they could have, like, fabricated like he was still alive and just made it go like, okay, he's still alive. We're going to let the Colliers think he's still alive, and we're going to make it seem like he's the one that performed the car exploding hit. So maybe that's the justification, because all Lawrence talked about, at least from the conversation we got in episode 8, was he said all he did was make a call, one call. So, not less it's a 1-2 punch of what we find out later on, that it's like, not less it was Lawrence made his call, that's that first hit, and then the car exploding was Catherine's hit. So there were 2 separate hits, and they just snatched Catherine's hit and made it seem like it was a success when it wasn't. But yeah, was told like she had to disappear. She wanted to leave with Imogen, but carrying around a kid, that would have been too much. It's like the longer, the more places you go with a kid, the more and more of a problem it would be. So you have to leave Imogen behind. And even had, like I said, I think that's Andres, but I could be wrong. But her right-hand dude was like, I'm not going to have a kid's death on my conscience. So I need you to do this. You cannot contact anyone. And it's like, yeah, that typically is when someone disappears, what screws them over is they can't, either they find themselves doing the same habits and they get caught in that pattern, or they contact people because they can never fully let go, which seen some stuff recently, won't spoil anything, I'll go ahead and talk about it. It's being a particular point of contention in the TV show adaptation of Mr. and Mrs. Smith. So I think it's kind of interesting along those same veins. But yeah, Kara had to leave DNA behind, pulled out 2 of her teeth. And I'm so curious to go back to those earlier scenes where we saw that sequence, whether it's episode 7 or whatever, when they were looking back on the crime and stuff, or episode 1. Like, did Kira touch her face before, like, in that scene? Because it seemed like and I like that Imogen was going through it, and I even love that we got the context of Kira being like, wait, you're imagining everything. It's like, that's the only way she can clearly picture everything and understand everything and process everything, is by putting herself there. I mean, that's just the power of, like, how her mind works. And I love that we are doing it. She did it with Rufus, and now she's doing it with her own mom in this situation. But my point was, I wonder if you do go back to those scenes before she talks to Imogen, do you see her touch her face a little bit? Because she did in that particular scene. But that might have just been Imogen in the moment being like, oh, I'm so caught up in it. Like, oh, okay. Like, she pulled the teeth, had them already set up on the floor and everything to leave behind DNA. And I always thought that truck going by just as the vehicle exploded, I was like, that seems super suspicious, but we never got an answer to it. It's like, yeah, because Kira hopped onto that in that vehicle just as the car, because she's the one that detonates it. And I love Kira. It's like, Imogen's like, no, you weren't in the car. You were in the car. And it's like, if you actually go back, it's one of those things where I'm like, if you look at one of the episodes, I want to say maybe it's in the first episode, but definitely in the episode where she's going back through the crime, like in her head as Rufus, as he's running through everything. When a car explodes, there's no one in it. But you're also thinking like, well, that could actually just been like a filming and editing issue where it's like, oh, like they show the car being empty. Like, you're thinking like, I mean, I don't know if that was a mistake that just happens to work out because it's like, right, I mean, obviously you don't want anyone actually in the car when it explodes, but like the viewpoint they of the camera shot of it shows the car being completely empty, and I don't know if that was done on purpose at the time. I was like, was that just a filming mistake, or maybe it was and it just happens to perfectly work out, or like, no, it was 100% on purpose, and I just don't know. Like, you can clearly see, like, there's no one in the car right before it explodes. That's why I'm like, I don't know if that was a mistake that just happens to perfectly time out workout. Because, like I said, I just assumed, like, oh, maybe it's just a filming mistake. They didn't mean to include that, but, whatever. Because they do linger on the shot. Like, why not just start the explosion from another angle and then switch to that angle part explosion? But maybe they only had one camera. Once again, nice me getting caught up on the production side, but it's like, maybe, like I said, I thought it was just maybe a filming mistake. Maybe it wasn't. They just were able to use it to an advantage, or maybe that was 100% intentional. It's unclear, because sometimes stuff just slip by people's eyes of like, oh, we didn't even notice that at the time, until we got to the final cut where you're like, oh, we already shipped it out, too late to kind of retract it now, that's what I'm curious about. But either way, tangents are not, well, it's not even a tangent, it is on point, but yeah, because Imogen was like, I saw you crank the car. It's like, no, you never did. You heard the car crank, but you never actually saw me there, because like her back was turned and she didn't turn around until she saw the explosion. Because it's like, yeah, you never actually heard me crank, like you, because it's like you imagined it, you like either because Kira wasn't in the car to crank it, so I don't know if she's saying like, no, I did crank it and then I got out, or like I never cranked it at all and then exploded and you just assumed you heard the car. But whatever the case may be, Imogen never saw her in the car. It's just, and as Imogen goes like, right, memory's a motherfucker, it's like, right, you kind of, I mean, especially 18 years later, like you're going to fill in, your brain is automatically going to fill in certain gaps and it's going to twist, because once again, it's that conversation I talk about all the time. It's really interesting. I don't know if it's like really scientifical, but maybe it is is the whole element of when you're thinking about something, you're never actually remembering the original memory. You're remembering the memory of the memory. So it becomes so diluted when you're trying to remember it more and more because you're only remembering the memory, not like the original memory is no longer there. All you have is a snapshot of your memory of the memory. So that's, that's where things can kind of get diluted and contorted. So that was the interesting development. And for Kira, it's like, I've been at this for 18 years. I got plastic surgery. I even changed my eyes. And she's like, I hope you don't do that, Imogen. I want you to keep your blue eyes. You should. And so she ends up showing her daughter the whole operation. It's like, right, it isn't the government or monarch figureheads. It's the billionaires that kind of run the world. It's like, oh yeah, we like these posts, we do this and we do that, while they are just slowly destroying us and we're not even realizing. I was like, I wasn't expecting us, like, it goes in line with what Kira wants, so it makes sense, but I wasn't expecting her to kind of have like this, like, I don't even know if it's like going against the establishment, but like understandable, like the rich and powerful run so much, they're responsible for so much, and it's like, yeah, we kind of take it on the chin and we smile, we let them just network and control everything without really putting up much of a fight. Because for her, the eye-opening thing is, for her, it's like, for so long she left evidence behind to expose everything, but the corruption proved to her, like, oh, it didn't mean anything. The Colliers never went down because of people like Andrea, like, burying stuff. So it's like no justice was ever served. And she's like, right, I was naive into thinking that. And what that meant, like, what did I do all this for? I did this so that there could be some form of justice. And for what? I lost my daughter. I had to leave her behind. I had to leave behind my name and my face. For what? No justice was served. And so that's when she orchestrated this whole operation. She wants to take them all down. But Kira's talking to her. It's like, talking to Imogen about, like, right, we can do this together. But for Imogen, it's like, no, we can walk away. Mom, like, you got your revenge. It's all good. Like, we can start over again. You already did it once. Let's do it again. And we cut to 6 months later, and it seems like they are. I'm like, did Kira really walk away from an operation this, like, big? I mean, I'm sure there's people who can run it in her absence, which technically there was never any absence, because we find out, is still neck deep in all this. And I even love that line from Rufus of, yeah, Kira never gave anything up. It's like, oh, I get to keep my daughter while making her naive enough to believe that everything's okay, but I'm still doing this because this mission is too important, because it's been something that's been a part of Kira's life for so long that it's like, it's hard to let go. Once again, you are the monster they made you into, and now it's like there's no going back, because in so many ways she can't look in the mirror and see Kira anymore, because the Kira she was is dead. The Colliers killed that Kira, and now all that left is this person who has been consumed by revenge. Just like Imogen's been consumed by her mom's death for these past 18 years, Kira's been consumed by her revenge, and there's no letting that go. Now that the genie's out of the bottle, there's no putting it back in. It could use that metaphor, it could use the Pandora box. I think that'd probably be an even more apt comparison of just like the evil and stuff that she's done, which she justifies, like, right, it's evil people I've gotten rid of. It's like, yeah, but what about Danny? Danny, the guy who only wanted to help so he could keep the promise that Rufus promised me and just find the truth about you. It's like, you killed an innocent guy who was trying to solve your murder. It's like, yeah, but hard decisions have to be made. It's like, that still doesn't, it's like, and even Imogen was like, yeah, and you're not even like heartbroken about it. You're just kind of like, it is what it is. Like, sacrifices have to be made for the greater good of what I'm trying to accomplish. So there's a lot on that front. So we're going to circle back to that. Let's pause there, and then we're going to transition over to the Anna side of things after the 6-month skip. It's interesting, the inverse of how that family dynamic is switched. Whereas, like, we have Anna, like, the moment they showed her doing coke, I was like, oh, let me guess. She's the one that's, like, falling apart. She's the one that's kind of, like, her and Trip have switched roles. And they have. She's the one that's partying and drugging herself up. You're like, understandable after everything. Her and Layla didn't work things out. I mean, granted, this is, like, 6 months later. So, maybe they were still trying, but she's filed for divorce, and it's up to Layla to sign the papers, which we find out later on she never actually filed them. So it's not official because she hasn't given up on her marriage, but it's just like Image. She just wants to leave because I meant to say Layla, but Layla's leaving just because it's not where she belongs anymore. It's just like, yeah, there's no point in sticking around. She even tells Trip he doesn't have to stay either, but for him it's like, no, I have to be ironically enough, the one who takes care of this family. Like, he's looking after his sister, he's looking after his dad. It's like giving his dad like his treatment, and even like, oh, here's your spoon that's ready and everything. And even Layla's like, because they're actually, which is actually really sweet, they're like, we're gonna miss each other, you know. That is like interesting. It's like, because Trip is like, who know we two would be the most sane people in this family. It's like, yeah, Layla, who everyone thought was crazy, Trip, the screw up. It's like, yeah, we're the most sane people after everything. So, and so we find out they lost a lot in the aftermath of everything. So the only place they have left is this place. They're like, oh, it's only because Anna was luckily able to hold on to it, which ties into so much the Anna side of things that you're like, how much of that was like, oh, you lucked out, or was this part of something else? So we'll get to that when we get to it. But Kira is sitting down with Imogen, and then we get the beautiful reveal where like Rufus strolls up, and then we find out like, oh, in actuality, the piece of the puzzle we couldn't let go of, you let Lawrence. Lawrence was like the ire. He was the start of all of this, and you were going to let him go. Yeah, he has his situation of dementia and stuff, but are you really going to let that go? And it's like, no, of course you hadn't, because your planet started years before the cruise, because you've been poisoning him. I was like, oh my god. Which is also ironic too, because we get that scene, I think that was like after the scene with Trip actually giving him his nutrition thing or whatever. The thing that's making him sicker and sicker is what Trip's giving him. And then we get the beautiful, juicy, poetic vengeance of, you are killing him with the same stuff that was killing those workers in that factory. Capsium blue. You've been poisoning him with it for years. How fucked up. How, like, it's so fucked up, but from a, like, poetic point, you're like, that's genius. That's super fucked up, but from a, like, twisted mind, that is genius revenge of, like, oh my god, that's so good. Like, the thing that's been, and even they go back to the scene of, oh yeah, like, what are some of the symptoms? Cancer, dementia. I was like, fuck, dude, I love a good crime drama, dude. I love me a good whodunit when you go back and you're like, oh my god, the clues were there. I was just too stupid to piece it together. It never correlated. I'm like, oh yeah, the Capsium blue thing. Never correlated that to Lawrence's circumstances. I was like, that's so good. That was such a beautiful reveal. And then we also find out, once again, because as the episode went on, I kind of let it go. Like, at first I was like, what are they doing? And we saw when they were on the boat with Rufus, they had those carts with them. I'm like, what's that about? And it's like, well, it turns out they snuck the servers off, because before she went to confront her mom, she knew, like, oh, you're going to try and destroy the servers and cover your, and so that's what they got off the ship, were the servers. So it's like, not only did we still have all the information about your previous crimes, because the servers are still connected, I know for the past 6 months, you've still been operating this way. Which I'm still unclear about the Victor Sams of it all. Well, no, I'm so stupid. Because in my head, I think what was screwing me up, I think with the Victor Sams of it all was like unclear. It's like, I'm always associating like Victor Sams was already operating beforehand. It's like, no, you idiot. Victor Sam's name did not come up until after Kira's death, because I guess maybe they were, or maybe that was like the name like Andres had used to set this all in motion. It was all, well, Kira, they probably, once again, they created a fake hitman to come after her after I think Catherine put out that second hit. The first hit came from Lawrence, the second hit I think came from Catherine, but they probably created someone, and that's where Victor Sam started, and then Kira just took that name and ran with it the entire time. Because like, how else did like Rufus eventually come across the name Victor Sam? So it seemed like it was retroactively, it was probably set up before like Kira's death of like, this is going to be the person taking her down, and then because I was thinking in my head, like, for whatever reason, I've been treating it like Victor Sam's was active well before Kira's death, but it's like, no. And that's supposed to be the sign too of Victor Sam's didn't really fully operate until after Kira's death, is where they've been moving and shaking the entire time. I think that's where I was kind of getting hung up on the details, the wrong details, and focusing on the wrong thing and misunderstanding everything. So, but yeah, in that moment, everyone's there. We've got Teddy's there. So is Layla. Obviously, Jules showed up because Kira's was reaching for the gun underneath the table, but no. That was already tampered with. And, obviously it's the sad thing of Imogen. I guess for a moment, Imogen was hoping on some level, maybe her, I think it's hard to say how different the story would be if Imogen was spending this time with her mom and her mom hadn't kept up the Victor Sam stuff with them being together. Like, if she had just let it go, would Imogen have let it go? Probably not. You can't have gotten away with all the terrible things you've done. Yes, these are bad people and they needed to be brought to justice, but it still doesn't change the fact that you killed a lot of people, bad or not. You still crossed the line. Plus, you're continuing to still do it. And let's start where all this started. You still killed Danny, who was innocent in all of this. So it's not like your hands are like oh, you're on the right side of justice. You're on the wrong side of justice. I mean, once again, that's the anti-hero element of it all, of like, justice versus vengeance and that whole conversation. So, but yeah, like Imogen having to take down her mom, like I think she has enjoyed these past few months, but it's still like there's I guess Catch-22 might be the proper thing of like, right, you've been searching for your mom's killer the entire time and it ended up being your mom and you were happy to have her back, but then you see the monster she's kind of become and how much of your mom is still there. There's elements of her, but she's not really there anymore, so that's got to sting and rub you the wrong way. Everything's just, it's kind of sad to see things kind of play out this way, and it's just like, right, here you are, or having your own mother arrested. That's, after finally having her back, just to lose her in this way. It's like, it's a very, very rough situation to be in. So, putting that aside, some of the other catch up I didn't talk about is, there's the whole, what happened in that 6 months. Teddy's still looking for Winnie, but some of the other family members know about her circumstances, but they're like, right, Winnie will reach out when she wants to reach out. So there's that. As I brought up previously, Layla wants to try and make things work out with Anna. It's like, right, she lost her dad, like she lost her mom, once again finding out about the truth about her dad, and then like Llewellyn, I'm not referencing Lawrence, but just the things they've done and just everything that's happened. And Imogen was like, yeah, she lost her wife as well, but that's where Layla's like, no, I want to work this out because I need to be there for her. But Imogen's like, right, none of us listened to you. You were right all along. And Imogen says, I won't, I'll pay attention again this time. And ultimately, Layla's like, yeah, but if I was in anyone else's shoes, like, if it was me, I wouldn't have believed me either. So she's being a little more, forgiving. So she still loves Anna, so she wants to give her a chance and wants to be for her. Like, how can I, abandon her at a time when she's at her most lowest and her most vulnerable? We also catch up with Sunil, who is going to testify against, Kira with everything, but he's also going to go on trial for his actions. Because as we know, even before, because I think Kira had brought it up last episode. Not Kira, it was her right-hand man that brought it up last episode that even, everyone's got their sins before everything, but even before Sunil got in bed with, Victor Sams, he had already done stuff, even as a banker, before his next venture, which got him mixed up in it. So it's not like he was innocent before he met up with Victor. It's kind of the whole point he was making last episode. But yeah, Sunil's still trying to reach out to Kira. And obviously he's like, yeah, the judge we got is not looking good. Might spend some time in prison. But it's like, yeah, I'll find you when I get out. But Kira's looking at Jules. And it's like, right, been kind of caught in this love triangle. I'd almost wondered for a second, will there be a Jules and Teddy situation? Not unless there ends up being a Teddy and Sunil. But they seem like friends and partners. I don't ever see that turning into that. But yeah, I think even Sunil was kind of reading the tea leaves there, where it's like, yeah, Jules kind of wasn't who he claimed to be, but he wasn't in bed with the person that, well, it's like Sunil lied, and it's like, even if it ended up being Kira in the end, it's still like, hey, at the time, the person responsible for taking away my mom, you were in bed with him, doing business with him, so regardless of your reasoning, you still lied to me. Jules, for the most part, had lied about his own personal side of things, And and we obviously there's more altruism because he was like, hey, he was helping some Ukrainian refugees. So almost makes me wonder, like, because Kira did, I mean, not Kira, but Imogen did say in that episode when she was talking to Yeva, like, yeah, we probably won't meet again. Kind of create some opportunities maybe in the future where they will cross paths. I think that'd be kind of poetic to bring that storyline back around. And in what capacity, I'm not sure what circumstances they meet again, but I think that'd be interesting. So there's all of that. And then finally, we get the final reveal. Because Kira didn't seem too butthurt about being arrested. She did kind of look almost like disappointed in Kira, but I think maybe there's some part of her that's proud because it's like, right, you do notice things, you pick up on things, you were the distraction, so I wouldn't notice about the whole server situation. You orchestrated all of this. So that's impressive, but it's also disappointed. So I'm sure she's got a flux of feelings, but she has a very stone face. But it seemed like she don't seem too concerned about it. And all she said was like, well, shit, you got me. She didn't say the got me part, but that's, so I'm like, it seemed like there was more to them. Like, feels like she's not too worried about it. Well, we find out she always has an ace in her back pocket because it's Anna. Because we find out Anna's the one that killed Catherine. I'm like, oh my God, yes. Which is so interesting because Kira, and because they even showed it in the recap, Anna was talking to Imogen about, oh my God, like, I'm going through this and that, and I'm feeling these certain ways about Llewellyn dying, finding out he's my real dad. Oh, but none of that matters to you because all you're focusing on is the man who murdered your mom, which is ironic considering the fact is that Anna is the one that confronts Catherine about it. Like, where she was talking about, oh, that's all you're focusing on. It's like, now that's all she could focus on. Because it's like, right, you lied to me my entire life about who my dad really is. And you murdered Kira. And you had the audacity to say that, hey, we made Imogen's life better. It's like, you saw her crying every night for her mom. She had nightmares. She was broken up about it. And you were the one responsible for it. And it's like, oh, Catherine had the audacity to be like, oh, I did the right thing. She said, like, if everything had been revealed, so many people would have lost their jobs. And it's like, don't give me that bullshit. You don't care about those people's jobs. What it comes down to is the money and their reputation sinking if Kira had done what she had done. It's ironic, too, being responsible, at least in her eyes, she thought she was responsible for killing Kira, considering, like, right, you and Llewellyn had an affair and had Anna, and Llewellyn was always in love with Kira, so it makes that so interesting. But yeah, Anna killed her mom, and then Kira showed up, and it's like, no, I'll handle this for you. And it's like, what do you want in return? It's like, oh, you have to do exactly what I said. It's like, Anna not realizing, like, okay, so I'm like, nothing in this, you would know better than anyone, nothing in this world comes for free. So obviously your debt comes where it's like, yeah, Kira's in jail, but I'm assuming Anna's going to be like, maybe running things, but also maybe not. But it's probably more so like, you're going to help get rid of any evidence against Kira. And, that's probably what that's going to be. I don't know if it's going to be a thing of, hey, you're going to hire someone to kill Sunil, because once again, I think he still is like a witness against Kira. Maybe he's got his own trial, but he's got I think he's a witness against Kira. But it's like there's other. That was so good because now it also explains Anna's entire. I didn't really talk about it last episode, but her being like, You're thinking she's so broken up of, oh my God, I found out about my dad, Llewellyn, my bio dad, and then my actual dad has kind of lost his mind even though he's responsible for some terrible stuff, and my mom is dead. It's like, no, she's broken up, like diving into like women and stuff and coke and all this. She's falling off hard while she went to the morgue to check on her mom's body because of her own guilt. It's been eating away at her. That's why things didn't work out between her and Layla, is because she felt like she didn't deserve it. It's like, no. She was probably trying those past few months, but eventually she was just, no, I have to let you go. Like, regardless, I've caused too much. It's like, you were kind of treated as a crazy one, so it's that, plus I'm not a good person. Everything you did, your craziness, quote unquote craziness, is like aside, like that was all in service of the good you were trying to do. So there's so much there. Oh God, so there's that side of things, but also Kira comes up, not Kira, but Imogen. It's her Jules, Teddy, and I believe it. Oh God, and Layla. Jesus, I was blinking there for a second. Come across someone's body and it looks like they're severed bits. I thought the reveal was gonna be like, is it gonna be Sunil's body or something like? It was like, well, he is on house arrest, so there's no going anywhere for him. But I thought that's what we were gonna see, like, oh, the ankle monitor or something like that. So now it's up to Kira. Like, we're setting up her next. Not Kira. I keep doing that. Sorry, Imogen's next murder. But she's also got to deal with the aftermath of this. So there's probably a correlation in some shape or form, because we don't even know who the victim is, and maybe it might seem completely unrelated, but it'll probably tie it all together. I don't know. It sets up a lot of interesting things, because obviously, like, we're stepping into Imogen being, like, obviously, like, more the lead detective in all of this rather than Rufus. Rufus might show up. Obviously, it's like a Sherlock and Watson type of situation, but well, Holmes and Watson would be the better example to use. I mean, naming convention, using both last names. But she's kind of stepped out. Well, because I know it happens. Like, at least I'm basing this on the show Elementary, whereas like Joan, they gender bent the character of Watson, played by Lucy Liu, like kind of did her own thing, kind of became a detective in her own right. So I don't know if they're going to, like, I don't know if Imogen's going from Watson to Sherlock, or whether or not in the books Watson ever became the more detective on his own, or was he always that role of Watson to Sherlock? He will always be Sherlock's Watson, never just his own detective. I don't know if that's something that the show Elementary took its own liberties in that capacity, but either way, she's leveled up, but it's still like, yeah, I'm kind of still figuring this out. I'm still kind of an amateur at this, but that's why I'm curious. Like, once again, well, at the time you're recording this, I'm getting to this a couple days late, but at the time of recording this, it still has not been announced whether or not Hulu is going to renew the show for a second season. The most recent thing I was reading is there are more positive updates from the creators of the show saying, so I guess it's like things are looking more likely that there might be one, but it's not been confirmed yet. So don't think to take that as an immediate confirmation, but I think it's like things are looking more positive at least. So I'm excited. Hopefully we do get a second season. I'd love to see where this all goes, for the show to go as long as they want it to. I never brought up the parallels, but it's like, it's interesting once again with the Kira of it all and only murders at the building. I don't want to spoil things, but I brought up like, oh, that's where I know Linda Edmond from, and I was like, yeah, it's just kind of interesting. I was thinking about talking about it last episode, but I kind of let it slip my mind. I was like, yeah, these kind of spoilers for Only Murders in the Building, but it's just, yeah, I won't go into the details, but if you've seen Only Murders in the Building, that's why I'm like, production schedule wise, I wonder, like, was she doing both of these at roughly the same time? Which one did she do first production wise? Obviously, Only Murders came out obviously a couple months ago, but it's just an interesting parallel between Donna and Kira slash Hilde. But either way, like I said, fingers crossed, hoping for a season 2. I'd assume we'd get a lot of the same cast. Obviously, we'd get Anna's return, Tripp's return. Lawrence is going to be interesting. I'd assume they'd eventually tell Tripp, like, he probably already knows now, yeah, stop giving your dad that stuff because you're kind of poisoning him, but we'll see. I mean, the damage is sadly already done, but, you could at least, like, alleviate some of it, and maybe it could get better to some extent, but it's damage already done. Will we see any more from, like, Eleanor or Cecile going for, not Cecile, Celia going forward? Will we get anything with them? Like I was kind of wondering, like, will Rufus be in the second season? Would it be to a smaller extent, or will he be the main part of things? I don't know. I mean, I guess he'd kind of be her Danny going forward, so that's probably it. But if they did bring him back, would it be a situation where... Because I posited this, like, early on in the show, like, oh, will we find out, like, Rufus dies early on and it becomes Imogen running things? But it's like, no, survived the entire time. Could easily pull a situation where it's like, no, he dies in the second season pretty early on. That could be an element to it. Or maybe he's just not in the second season a lot because this is just Imogen's rodeo now. Stuff like that. So I'd be so curious to see, if given the opportunity, what a season 2 would have in store. So fingers crossed, hoping for one. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. good day, and goodbye.